dignity and with equal opportunities to develop their potential. Only when these rights are met can people begin to feel safe in all aspects of their lives and enjoy integral human security. We together advocate for strategies that support lasting transformation in people's lives, creating more resilient, inclusive societies where people are safe from threats such as the arms race, poverty, and violence. Security, understood as human flourishing, has multiple dimensions. You know that well. Economic, food, health, environmental, political, and on and on. These strengthen the protection and empowerment of people and communities and address the root causes of insecurity. Pax Christi International holds a distinguished position as a highly regarded voice within the Catholic community. Working with church bodies at various levels, we foster dialogue and promote nonviolence and just peace, engaging the church in this work through the Catholic Nonviolence Initiative. Since 2011, diplomacy and advocacy to abolish nuclear weapons have increasingly been framed by a humanitarian approach. Concerned with the humanitarian, environmental, and integral human security impact of nuclear weapons, Pax Christi International aims to leverage its global presence for grassroots education, mobilization, and lobbying, highlighting the critical importance of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW, in the broader context of integral human security. This profound shift that we seek will require vision and faithful commitment. For followers of Jesus, this shift will be inspired by the Sermon on the Mount. For the whole global community, it will be rooted in an emergent paradigm that stands sharply against the paradigm of violence and injustice.
Is this one?
The way of active, transformative, faithful, and effective nonviolence. I'm very happy this morning to introduce 4 speakers who will address different aspects of this very broad topic. I'll introduce each of you just before you speak rather than all at one time so that you can know who's speaking as they speak. We'll begin with Jonathan Frerichs. Jonathan is Pax Christi International's representative of Disarmament at the United Nations in Geneva, and he is the lead in the working group that addresses these issues. Jonathan has served as a program executive and consultant for the World Council of Churches and its Commission of the Churches on International Affairs. He has worked as a reporter, a writer, a producer, a teacher, a trainer, and an executive for many international, religious, and civil society organizations in many different parts of the world. His professional experience is mostly in faith-based endeavors related to peace, human security, disarmament, development, and the environment. Welcome, Jonathan. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Marie. I'd like to just add a few more names to the list of what we're doing this morning by mentioning other people in this room who are part of this working group that I'm representing with my talk. Franco Dinelli, you saw yesterday. Anselmo Lee, you've seen already today. We see him all the time, don't we? And Marie, of course. Martin Pilgrim, we also see him all the time up the front here as part of the working group. Godfred Mare Harry. We are blessed by his presence sometimes, and we're just so amazed that he has even the time to think about us and remember us because we are so blessed by that presence. And of course, Julia, the world's best secretary, as far as I can tell, organizer, manager, planner, doing a wonderful job for all of this work. And also Marta Ines having time to join us in our calls. So that's a real blessing to have that team. The topic that I'm supposed to focus on here in 12 minutes is there on the screen for you to see. And I take it you've read it by this time, and I'll move on. Just this one?
Yes.
I'll move into a little bit of a entrance on 3 points. The weapons of mass destruction side that comes with nuclear weapons, the frightening new and also not exactly mass destruction, but really a new form of it that comes with autonomous weapons. And then some of the things which we are challenged by as people of faith and people of action who want to bring justice, for a few comments at the end of the session. So to just put us in the right frame of mind, I think it's good to have thoughts like this. We're made in God's image. Humankind is called the crown of creation. Yet the 20th century invention of nuclear weapons poses an unprecedented threat to our existence and our home in God's creation. And now in the 21st century, armed conflict is being transformed almost as we sit here by the increasing autonomy and lethality of remotely controlled weapons. Think of the places that are in the news right now, including Sudan, Darfur. But come with me to a moment that speaks through all cultures. This is Hiroshima on the morning every year, August 6th, when they remember what happened to them. And this beautiful person came out dressed like this, looking at the sun. It was a bright day. It was a wonderful day. And then she noticed something that wasn't part of the scene she had been worshiping a millisecond earlier. And she pointed to the point in the sky, which was the ground zero of the bomb that morning. And what happened? That's a picture of Nagasaki 3 days later. So for us to, as human beings, for us to come to grips with this reality of beauty, culture, gifts, faith, and then mass destruction, mass indiscriminate destruction in a millisecond, harnessing the power of creation in the atom. And I'm sure everybody in the room is motivated by this challenge, but we can't ever spend enough time trying to understand what it means. So to go back to where we came from, some quick things to remember. All people are made in God's image. God loves all people equally. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Life is a priceless gift. Don't kill people. Make swords into plows and take care of creation. What a jerk from one slide to the next. What a rip of our hearts and our souls. Atomic bombs violate all of these. They have no time for any of these. They have no possible relevance, positive relevance to any of this. So broadly shared, I would say ecumenical, pan-Christian and beyond the Christian faith. Splitting the atom is a cosmic sin. To use the energy of the atom in ways that destroy life is a sinful misuse of God's creation. We have to listen to nuclear survivors. They cry out for exodus from the nuclear age, from mass destruction, genetic mutations, poisoned lands and seas, radioactive threats, and then live in ways that protect life. Christians are called not to accept that the mass destruction of other people can be a legitimate form of protection for ourselves. That last paragraph or sentence there, that's what we've been living with in international affairs since 1945. And what must God be thinking about us, made in his image, that that's still what we're struggling with? And how the nations who've taken part in this weapon, the 9 states, set themselves apart and refuse to join in the collective advance towards peace. Just to put us back again in the right frame, this is a woman named Coco Kondo. She was 1 year old when the bomb went off in Hiroshima. I think we have to cry when you talk about these things. Her mother held her under her body, and we met her on a trip there And these Bible verses from Psalm 139 came to mind. You formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I'm wonderfully made. And she is wonderfully made. Look at how she treats church leaders. The delegation was just swept away by her. A wonderful witness to us. Never able to have a child herself, but because of the, as you know, radiation is gender biased. It's biased against women. And but her mother went on to have other children. So one little story of the hundreds of thousands which happened in that millisecond. Moving on to the next topic for the morning, another light one, killer robots. Start with a Bible bearing, outsourcing the sixth commandment. Isn't that attractive? Just outsource the sixth commandment to high-tech computers. Is that progress? Well, it's certainly the shape of future conflict. I just want to make 2 points about it. There's 2 ways to control weapon systems. Make a treaty and ban them, which is what we should have done completely already with nuclear weapons. The other way is when there isn't a treaty, you're still not free to have them. And so it's good to remember something called the Martens Clause. I think a Dutch diplomat working in Moscow before the Russians came up with some of these ideas, which are part of the laws of disarmament and arms control. So in cases not covered by specific international agreements, civilians and combatants still remain under the protection of customary law, the most basic form of law for all of us, for all of history, the principles of humanity. Here's where Mr. Martens got complicated. The principles of humanity, what are those? And the dictates of public conscience. This is a moment of arms control world being quite spiritual, I think, and quite penetrating. This is the absolute threshold which applies to all weapons, including nuclear weapons, obviously. Mentioned the gender issue a minute ago. Remember, that's the ratio for the effect of nuclear radiation. It affects 2 boys. It affects 4 girls. And Coco Kondo is one of those little girls. The second category behind the Martens Clause is this one. Humanitarian disarmament treaties are ways to codify the power of the Martens Clause. And this is actually quite a success story. Those of you who don't work in this field, please get real serious and thank God for what's on the screen right now, because some really interesting treaties in relatively short recent period have been concluded to make the Martens Clause something real. So the Arms Trade Treaty, the Cluster Munitions Convention, the Landmine Ban Treaty, the Chemical Weapons Convention, the Biological Weapons Convention, and something that was banned before it was ever even made because it's so obviously bad and inhuman, blinding laser weapons. So back in the 70s, when these were 80s, when these were being considered to be made, the CCW, which is the treaty that codifies, sets up the delegations to move forward, deliberations to move forward, actually banned them on the spot. And pretty much the ban has worked. Nuclear weapons are off to the side. They're too much of a problem to be dealt with by this thing. But the other weapon system I want to point to briefly in this time we have is the whole idea about killer robots, lethal autonomous weapons, the weapons of the 21st century for the rest of the century, which we'll all have to live with, or we control them now. They will select and strike targets on their own. They don't do that yet, but they're getting ever closer. And they will make a preemptive ban and a new international norm to be urgently needed. And we're quite far from that. The CCW in Geneva has been talking about this for 12 years and hasn't managed to put one piece of ink on paper that would be part of the treaty. So the key point is meaningful human control. What is that with autonomous weapons? You control the target selection and attacks. Otherwise, they become killer robots. Killer robots aren't here yet, but they're getting ever closer. They're strangely related to us in as much as we give them intelligence. This term, artificial intelligence, AI, terribly problematic word, I think, for us as human beings to accept uncritically. AI, 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 AI. Name your field, it will affect it. But it's well advanced already, and we anthropomorphize it with extravagant claims about how wonderful it's going to be. Elon Musk just signed a deal to get $1 billion or something, partly almost everything with AI in the kind of thing he does. And SIPRI, the Swedish International Peace Research Institute, just reminds us AI is computational capacity. That's all it is. They aren't beings. Trying not to get off the track with that one. But with new weapon systems, the history of warfare is going to be shaped by inventions with exponential rates of change possible in different areas. And look at the environments where these weapons will have applications: on land, in the sea, in the air, in outer space, in cyberspace, and in microbiology. Can we protect life and creation in such a future? Does our heritage in governance, in law and arms control equip us for the task? Where's the moral courage and the multilateral accountability that will surely be required? And what do our weapons say about us and our era? Leave that topic there with the kind of drones that are showing up at Brussels airport. And you see them in the park. They're cousins of what we're talking about. And then just the biggest single thing I wanted to say today is this is a NGO action in front of the UN a few years ago when we were pushing for these treaties, celebrating the ones we have already. So look at the print there: landmines, cluster munitions, chemical weapons, biological weapons. Nukes next, banning nuclear weapons next. And we put this there on the broken chair, which Handicap International put in front of the UN meeting grounds in Geneva. But what I'd like to suggest as a closing thought is these are all very important concrete steps. Some of them are at risk because of what Putin is doing on Europe's eastern borders. How many of you are from a country that's thinking of getting out of the landmine ban or the cluster munitions ban because you want to be able to stop Putin in Eastern Europe? So this is already getting eroded. We thought we had all this progress. It's getting eroded by current events. But what strikes me is this is an image of a chair with a broken leg. And those are weapons which essentially affect people one at a time. But the things I've just been speaking about for this presentation are weapons of mass destruction. And the capacity for mass destruction, even with things that aren't huge explosives like nuclear weapons, but say biological weapons or other ones, are really forcing us to think of disarmament in global terms: the health of the earth, the health of the human family, which is quite different from the joy we've all had to see landmines getting cleared away and farmers being able to get back into the field. But I think the direction of modern warfare and technology is taking us back into mass and indiscriminate destruction beyond the first variety, which is nuclear weapons, to other ways like that. I was going to run through some condensation of some of the working group topics, but I think my time is over. I won't go into details, but if you can speed read it with a prayer of thanks to the working group, that we can meet and talk about these issues and try to do things about them. And that's the last image I'd like to leave with you: the lanterns that people light every year in Hiroshima and put on the river to float down peacefully past the church or the municipal building, which is the key monument to what happened in 1945. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, reminding us that we are all made in God's image and that we are facing unprecedented threats that are a challenge to the protection of human life and creation, that will require moral courage on all of our parts. The challenge to think about disarmament in global terms, and the hope that you bring us that we can add our light to those lights in your last picture. So thank you so much. Next speaker is Richard Bosch. Welcome, Richard. Richard is an expert on peace education with Pax Christi in the Diocese of Rottenburg-Stuttgart. He received his doctorate at the University of Augsburg in Germany. His studies in international relations and peace and conflict research took him to Eberhard Karl's University in Tübingen, Germany, and the Institut d'études politiques de Paris in France. He's a member of the German Association of Peace and Conflict Studies, and his research focuses on understanding violent conflict as social systems and analyzing conflict escalation as a communicative process. Welcome, Richard.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation to this panel. Good morning, everybody. Let's please enlarge the presentation I brought with me. I am wonderful. Okay, for the next 12 minutes, I will talk about a few building blocks that support a mindset of nonviolence, which is, in my view, at the starting point of any serious effort of disarmament and ultimately of integral human flourishing. So, please. As we all know, we are living in times of unprecedented armament. You may know the latest numbers of military spending worldwide from SIPRI database. For me, the question is, what is the mindset that makes this excessive armament trend possible? How does the desire to arm oneself against each other come about? To explore these questions, I'd like to offer a few thoughts. Next one, please. Closer? Okay. To introduce my first point, I begin with a passage from the Gospel. By the way, we already heard it yesterday at the beginning of the morning session. And the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down off the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Don't be afraid. That's what Jesus said to the disciples on the Sea of Galilee. By the way, someone did the maths. He said it 24 times in the whole Bible. Don't be afraid. This scene on the sea, on the lake, moves me. It challenges me. I think we all know situations in our lives when storms are brewing, the waves are high, and when we are on the verge of losing our basic sense of security. Maybe it's difficulties at work, strokes of fate such as illnesses or accidents, conflicts in the family or in our relationships. Sometimes many of these things happen at once and plunge us into deep insecurity. I don't think I need to repeat all the news here which come on top. Economic crisis, the gap between rich and poor, man-made climate change, polarization, radicalization, the global rise of authoritarian political forces, even in the motherland of democracy like the US. Not to mention the wars and crises around the world, Ukraine, the Holy Land, Sudan, Congo, Myanmar. Sometimes everybody hurts, like in the song from REM, remember? I feel it. The world hurts with all the human suffering we are witnessing. And in this situation, people are flooded with information that causes fear and concern. The idea of being helplessly exposed to a threat, not recognizing it in time, and not having the appropriate means to avert the threat. All of this is understandably causes fear. We are currently experiencing how societies in Germany and in many other countries around the world are in a state of collective alarm and hysteria and seemingly cannot find a way out. Let's be honest, very few of us are fearless heroes who simply brush off all the bad news from around the world. No one is that cool. Fear is a normal human reaction to insecurity. Fears are part of life. Go back, please. Could you please go back? Back, yeah, sure. Back, yeah. Look at the Sea of Galilee. Fear is a normal human reaction to insecurity. Fears are part of life. They are protective mechanisms that help us cope with situations when we perceive as threatening. However, it becomes problematic when fear becomes a permanent state of mind. We know from psychology that people in severe states of anxiety are no longer able to make rational choices for themselves, let alone for others. Fear is a poor advisor, as the saying goes. Fear paralyzes. It obstructs our ability to think and act. The fatal thing about it is that states of fear can also be socially contagious. They can grow into a collective perception, into a phobia. Now Jesus comes up to the frightened people and says, "Have faith, it is I. Do not be afraid." I don't think that's a coincidence. In the midst of a turbulent sea of fear, in the midst of an existential crisis, Jesus wants to remind us of the innermost core of humanity. I am here. I will take you in my arms. I understand you. You can be with me, with everything you bring with you. I love you. This is how parents react. Their children are in need and seek comfort and security. In this scene, Jesus reminds us that it is okay not to be a superhero. It's okay not to know the perfect solution. It's okay to be in search of meaning. At the same time, he insists on using the inner compass that lies within all people. Where does the compass point to? It's God's all-encompassing will for mankind. Or in other words, we are all children of God, no matter what we look like, where we come from, what we own, what we believe, or whom we love. All of us, the entire human family, every single one of the 8.2 billion people on earth. And as children of God, we have all our place in the world, with our unique characters, our weaknesses and talents, and indeed our inviolable dignity. There is no Jewish blood. There is no Christian blood. There is no Muslim blood. There is only human blood, said the 102-year-old Holocaust survivor Margot Friedlander, who died in May this year. So we are all cut from the same cloth. There are no outsiders. Everyone is part of the great family of humanity. This is precisely what the inner compass is. The crucial point now is to use it. Have faith. Jesus calls out to the disciples in the eye of the storm. Have faith in yourselves. Have faith in others. Trust each other. And so I think the storm scene also gives clear indications of how to deal with the agenda of the Sermon on the Mount. First of all, for many people, it seems to be completely unreasonable to make peace by loving our enemies. That goes way beyond the pain threshold, and is certainly beyond that what many people can conceive of or do. But Jesus is serious and goes even further. Guys, it's easy to love your family. It's easy to love your friends. I want you to think about loving your enemy, seeing them as human beings. Think of a fanatic Trump supporter. Think of a far-right party sympathizer. Think of a Hamas member. Think of an Israeli soldier in Gaza. In any case, you can imagine what Jesus is proposing is not an easy walk. It is, in fact, a seemingly impossible walk on water in heavy seas. In the Pax Christi movement worldwide, we are dealing with a lot of conflicts at different levels. When I, as a peace educator, organize workshops with students at schools, universities, parishes, and activities in public, people sometimes come to me these days and say, your ideas of disarmament concerning nuclear powers, for example, your strategies to achieve peace in the Holy Land, your suggestions how to de-escalate the conflict in Ukraine are just absurd, unthinkable, impossible. Now, how people assess the projects that we promote in the peace movement worldwide largely depends on their view of the world and of humanity. We know from developmental psychology that the narrative of the world conveyed in childhood and adolescence has a profound impact on our entire lives. On one side of the spectrum is a perspective that can be summed up as a worldview and view of humanity based on control, or some would say mistrust. It describes the naturally given state of human relations as a battle of all against all. Homo homini lupus. A man is a wolf to a man, it says. And further, that human beings have an immanent driver for power, a biologically given desire to dominate others, an animus dominandi. Consequently, the world is described as a hostile place, a strange, chaotic world, in which one must constantly protect oneself, where everyone is only committed to oneself and must fight for survival. Through strength, possession, conquest, and subjugation. In this view of the world, violence is in the very nature of things. In this world, violence saves, as Walter Wink says. The world can never really be good, never. It is the scene of a perpetual confrontation in which the prize goes to the strongest. In contrast, at the other end of the spectrum is a view of the world and humanity that can be summed up with the concept of trust and connectedness. Here the world is described as a benevolent, generous home that can be approached with a basic sense of trust. Therefore, the world is fundamentally good, and it is possible to maintain relationships based on natural trust with each and every individual of this world. From this perspective, people learn how the I becomes a we, how everyone works together with their talents for the common good. Conflicts are still there. They arise in the process, but they are seen as an opportunity to argue with each other in a positive way and to develop as a society, as a whole. The diversity of people is seen as a source of strength, and cooperation among people is considered the best way to realize one's own interest and needs with those of others. The story of the disciples on the stormy lake raises a pressing question. Where do we stand on this spectrum between mistrust, control, on the one hand and trust connectedness on the other? What worldview and view of humanity, what basic attitude do we use to raise our children? What do we teach them at home, in schools, in our youth groups? A world of wolves filled with fear, where the law of the strongest prevails and violence is the normal way to resolve conflicts? Or a world of trust, where we stand confidently on our own 2 feet and recognize our sisters and brothers in other people? Wolves or siblings? Wolves or siblings? To conclude, I would propose the thesis as follows. The more people identify with the idea of siblings, the more likely we will see politics of disarmament, decreasing military spending and increasing cooperation at high level. The nucleus of disarmament, therefore, lies in peace education. Let's spread this idea together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. Do not be afraid. I am with you. We are all children of God. There are no outsiders. Is it possible to love our enemies? The view of the world that we share with our children, each other, where do we stand on that spectrum? Thank you. Our third panelist this morning is Sister Philo Hirota. Philo is a Mercedarian missionary of Florence, a native of Japan. Philo has served there and in the Philippines, in Nicaragua, and in Mexico. She was a member of the board of the International Union of Superiors General and of Pax Christi International. She's a consultant for the Catholic Council for Justice and Peace of the Japanese Bishops' Conference. Philo was the only woman on the preparatory commission for the Ordinary General Assembly of the Synod of Bishops, which met in October of 2023 and October of 2024. And she has welcomed many of us and so many other people as pilgrims to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Philo, welcome.
Thank you. If you want. Thank you. This year, we are commemorating the 80th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In 1946, the new constitution was promulgated. Article 9 of our constitution proclaims, aspiring sincerely to an international peace based on justice and order, the Japanese people forever renounce war as a sovereign right of the nation and the threat or use of force as means of settling international disputes. In order to accomplish the aim of the preceding paragraph, land, sea, and air forces, as well as other war potential, will never be maintained. The right of belligerency of the state will not be recognized. A woman Hibakusha once said, Article 9 is the price we paid with our sufferings. The Japanese government nominally kept the 3 non-nuclear principles. However, there are nuclear weapons introduced in the US bases in Japan. Not asking and not mentioning has been the practice. The new Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, the first female Prime Minister, had expressed her interest in revising Article 9 and scrapping the 3 non-nuclear principles. You remember she recommended President Trump for Nobel Peace Prize. Hibakusha's organizations requested the Prime Minister Takeichi not to do away with the three non-nuclear principles and a representative, and ask her to send a representative as an observer to the meeting of states parties to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons to be held. The Interfaith Article 9 Global Conference met in Okinawa in 2024, last year. Various interfaith peace organizations continue their activities. We participate in the activities motivated by gospel nonviolence. Pope Leo XIV, when he appeared on the balcony on May 8, said, "It is a peace of the risen Christ, a peace that is unnamed, unarmed, and disarming, humble and persevering, a peace that comes from God, the God who loves us all unconditionally." Okinawa is the only place in Japan where the fierce battle was fought during the Second World War. More than 200,000 people, including the Americans, Japanese, Koreans, Chinese soldiers, and civilians from Okinawa, had been killed. This year, Bishop Wayne Burnt is a Capuchin and American, is the ordinary of Okinawa. In his peace message on June the 23rd, which is the day to commemorate the end of the battle in Okinawa, declared Okinawa to be a neutral and demilitarized zone of peace. As we proactively involved in peace ministry, I keep asking myself about the church we belong. We are committed to work for a more just and humane world as church. The question is, how just and humane is our church? How does our church, my church, incarnate the God of Jesus, of compassion, of inclusion, of peace, of nonviolence, of justice, reflecting the feminine face of God, the Mother? God is Father and Mother, we know that. The church where each and everyone feels welcome, accepted, and embraced. The church where each and everyone participates in its evangelizing mission as equal partner. The church where we fully enjoy integral human flourishing. Come, Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philo. You have each opened our hearts in such profound ways this morning. Come, Holy Spirit, reminding us of the feminine face of God, how just and humane, how nonviolence is our church. Our last speaker is Father Claude Mostowick, who is a priest and a missionary of the Sacred Heart. After working in the Northern Territory, Father Claude studied at the Gregorian University in Rome, and for many years has served as Director of Justice and Peace for the Missionaries of the Sacred Heart. He has been deeply involved in many justice organizations, including Acceptance and the Rice Center for Justice and Education. He also served as the president of Pax Christi, Australia. Welcome, Father Claude. Do you want to move over here to the very first part?
I don't think. Do we have a presentation?
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Marie. And I'm standing on the shoulders of some little giants here. I think of my visit to Chartres Cathedral about 40 odd years ago, and they had these stained glass windows, and they had the prophets on a number of these windows, and then the evangelists sitting on their shoulders, much smaller little figures. I feel a bit like that today. But thank you for being here, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you in this family of Pax Christi, who live with Pax Christi. In 1962, at the height of the conflict between the Americans and the Russians, and Cuba was in the middle of it, Satish Kumar, a young Indian man, set off with a friend from India on a peace walk that took him to Moscow, to Paris, to London, Washington, through Afghanistan, the deserts of Iran, along the Black Sea to the Russian winter, and a politically divided Germany at that time. And he covered a remarkable number of kilometres and did it all without a single repeat. It's uplifting that people of all ethnicities and religions and classes and dogmas offered hospitality to these two curious young Indian men, with their well-worn clothes and translated peace leaflets, brimming with idealism. Satish chanted over and over the same Sanskrit dictum, so hum, which means you are, therefore I am, a recognition of the ultimate connectedness of all things. I'm sure there would have been easier options for him to carry out this message. One little item was when he was about to go into Pakistan from his country, people said, don't go there, they hate us and everything else. And once he got through the custody controls and so on at the border, he found that the Pakistanis already knew they were coming and welcomed him. When people realise that in all the diversity and differences, we see nationalities, religions and cultures, languages, all beautiful diversities, that they are superficial. Deep down, we actually share the same humanity in the global humanity. In other words, we have the same blood, as Richard was talking about. Kumar went through many different cultures: Muslim religion, Jewish religion, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, Russians, Americans, Europeans, Asians, socialists and communists. But when one digs deep and touches the humanity, the same humanity is everywhere. But to discover that unity, one must be free of prejudice and of fear. And he said that if he went waving the Indian flag, he would have met Pakistan. If he went proclaiming Hinduism as the supreme religion, he would have met a Christian or a Muslim, proclaiming that he got it wrong. If he went as a socialist, he would have met a capitalist. If he went as a brown man, he would have met a black man or a white man.
Sorry for the you just move here because the interpreters have that. Oh,
Sorry.
So if he went proclaiming, as I said, Hinduism as a supreme religion, he would have met a Christian or a Muslim proclaiming that he got it wrong. If you went as a socialist, you would have met a capitalist. If you went as a brown man, you would have met a black man or a white man. But he said, I went as a human being and I met only other human beings. Now, it's a rather extended little reflection, but I think it covers something that's been very much part of my thinking for some years now, especially from Laudate Si, when Pope Francis keeps talking about, or spoke about, the culture of encounter, how we meet other people, how we meet people. And in the context of this presentation today on disarmament and so on, I'm reflecting on how we do that here in Australia and in the Pacific. How do we look at the Chinese? How do we look at our First Nations people? How do we look at the peoples of the Pacific? Over the years, we've had testing in the Pacific, and we're told, with apologies to the French people here, that it wasn't dangerous. And we suggested, well, why don't you do it in Paris? You know, we've had those sorts of testings. And in recent years, over the last couple of decades, we've had a spear pointing at China. Jeju Island, which is supposed to be an island of peace in Korea, South Korea, Guam or Guam, and other parts of the Pacific. All these spears pointing at China. And what are we seeing? We're seeing threats, we see fear or feel fear, and so on. Pope Francis constantly called us to acknowledge the dignity of the human person. And when we are fearful, when we are untrusting, when we misinform and tell lies about other people, how can we find peace and security and the flourishing of people and the planet? And we should be grounded in our relationships with God, each other, and the creation. However, these relationships are wounded and needing reconciliation. As a missionary of the Sacred Heart, we have this heart spirituality, if you like, and it's based on the formula of the Sacred Heart, if you know anything about that. But the thing is, we talk about the love of God in a human heart, which we are called to represent in our everyday lives. We've heard that over and over again in different ways at this gathering in the last few days. That each day we are called to be something of the presence of our loving and embracing God for all of us. We find in my country we have banned nuclear weapons, sort of. The New Zealanders had the courage, quite some decades ago, under a very courageous Prime Minister, I think, to ban all nuclear weapons, and it didn't go too well with the ANZUS Treaty of the United States. In more recent times, we've had the AUKUS, if you heard of AUKUS, the Australian, UK and US treaty, was basically a treaty, and to build, it's a treaty supposedly defence, and we have bought or buying nuclear weapons. We're not supposed to have them. Buying nuclear weapons from the United States. We've paid a massive amount of money, which could have been used for education and other social welfare. And we're never sure that we're going to get those weapons in those submarines. I hope we don't. On Tuesday, when I left Sydney to come here, there was a demonstration in Sydney at the Convention Centre against an arms fair. These bazaars, there's all these countries, Israel as well was there, to show off the latest weapons that we've been talking about in rules. And our Pax Christi people were there too, and quite a number of them were pepper sprayed by the police. And it's interesting that the Premier, after that event, dined with the lobbyists in that centre. So these are the sorts of messages we are getting from people. When he calls himself a Catholic, I often think of him as a little boy trying to do a man's job anyway. But the thing is that this is the sort of things that we're dealing with. But Pax Christi has I'm not saying we've done a lot of stuff, but the thing is that members of Pax Christi have been involved with ICANN, which is the International Campaign Against Nuclear Weapons. We've been involved with AUKUS and another movement called Raising Peace, which has got nothing to do with us, but we have, we support them and so on. And also with the IPAN, an Independent and Peaceful Australia network. All these are trying in some way to, inform people, educate people, the dangers of these weapons, but more importantly, to remind people of our common humanity. Violence is not a cure for our broken world, and our world is broken. And I don't want to think that our world is just so bad. I think there's a lot of such beauty and goodness. And most people I meet are beautiful people and good people. And I think that's replicated all around the world. Violence, responding to violence, has led to forced migrations and great suffering, as vast resources are diverted to military ends and away from as I said earlier, away from the everyday needs of young people, of families experiencing hardship, the elderly, the infirm, and the great majority of people in our world. It leads to death, physical and spiritual, of many people, if not all of us. In Fratelli Tutti, Pope Francis often did speak of, he's not talking anymore, but noted that dark clouds are over our world. And he identified the trends in our world that hinder that development of universal fraternity. And I think that's the important thing to remember all the time. These interfere in the way of our sense of being sisters and brothers to each other, members of one human family, God's children. These things include shattered dreams of peace, economic globalization, new forms of cultural colonization, widespread social exclusion, political visions that are lacking a plan for everyone, lacking an inclusive plan, the lack of truly universal respect for human rights, more and more being degraded in many parts of the world, even in our own country. Of a throwaway world that even considers some people as disposable, with conflict and fear. And finally, the challenge of authentic encounter and communication of our digital world. Pope Francis was concerned that we are losing the ability to sit down and listen to one another, to seek the truth in dialogue. I've been concerned for some time now about social media, and I think it's got, we're using it a lot, and I think it's very important. But sometimes we use texting, for example, SMSs, all the time. We don't talk to each other. How do we connect with one another? All we're doing is just sending a message, a word. No one wants to even answer the phone to talk to someone. We have in Australia, we have this program, I don't know if it's anywhere else, but to try and deal with suicides among men. And there's a very high amount of suicides in Australia. And it's called, we're asked to sort of say to people, are you okay? Are you okay? But do we stop to wait? To ask them, really? Are you really okay? Is there anything, And that's the thing. And people say, yeah, I'm okay, and they move on. It's a bit like saying, how are you going? And they keep walking. They don't, this is the sort of down to the earth dialogue and connections that we lose if we don't follow them. Pope Benedict stressed, I think very importantly, that for Christians, non-violence is not merely tactical behaviour. I think I've said this already, but a person's way of being. It's an everyday thing. The attitude of one who is so convinced of God's love and power that she or he is not afraid to tackle evil with the weapons of love and truth alone. That love of one's enemy constitutes the nucleus of Christian revolution. I really appreciated Richard's comments on that, on loving the enemy, reaching out to the enemy. So that direct violence that we talk about is not just the physical violence that we witness. The structural violence we need to touch, as well as the cultural violence, where language and art and religion and so on are impacted. It's these that beset upon the marginalised and oppressed of Jesus' day, such as the Samaritans, the women, the lepers, and the violence defines Jesus' ministry as he seeks to liberate those whose lives are captive to destructive forces. And I think that's where we are at present. The call to us is to be in that same thing. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, he says, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He sent me to pray, proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour. So we do live in violent times shaped by the legacy also as a myth of exceptionalism, which perpetuates narratives that dehumanise those deemed to threaten, especially those people of colour, who are immigrants. There's a sacred canopy that legitimises that violence, and we sometimes have to pull that away.
Okay.
Simple.
You're getting close.
Okay. So let's just look at the various values that Pope Francis, Pope Leo, Benedict also have offered to us. And basically, I think they all are captured by what I said at the start about that culture encounter. It's not something that we do once. It's something that's ongoing all the time. Absolutely, and it's, I think we do that within people. So that's blood of my blood, flesh of my flesh. Yep.
Thank you so much, Todd. You're reminding us that about the ultimate connectedness of all things, of all people, that we are part of the same humanity is critical. Your reference to the arms bazaar in Australia and that sort of marketing of a methodology that's violent that we know is not a cure for our broken world. And a reminder that listening when we ask, "Are you okay?" is a very important part of the journey. So I think we have just a few minutes for some exchange among the panel, and also for you to begin thinking about what the questions will be part of your conversations, and when we break into smaller groups. Maybe I would invite any of you to ask someone else a question. And while you're thinking about that, yes, I would ask, what do you think from we've just heard a really beautiful reflection that both touched very deeply who we are as people of faith. What is it that motivates us? What is it that puts our hearts on fire to create a more peaceful and just world? And we've heard about the threats to that shalom, to that vision of a world that is truly peaceful. My question is, what would you say are the most fundamental challenges to achieving a just peace or shalom? Are they, and I don't think there's one fundamental challenge. I think you've all named some, but what from this conversation this morning so far, what struck you as really basic, really fundamental? Any thoughts? I would invite you to think about the same thing. Feel free to speak up or add to that question.
Look, just one thing that comes to mind. I think one of the problems we have is that when we're looking at what's broken in our world, and whether it's violence and conflict and so on, is the sense of inevitability. That this is inevitable. It's always been happening. It's too big. we can't handle it. We're too small. We're not gifted enough. We're not young enough. We're not old enough, and this sort of stuff. But in fact, all of us, and I love that image that I think it was John Zockerly said gave us the other day, the Gulliver's Travels, you know, with the Gulliver being tied up with all those little strings. It's a great image that we all just do a little bit. The thing is, when we have that attitude of inevitability, I think it really blocks us. And then there's an excuse for not doing anything.
Thank you. Others? Richard, I was particularly struck by your challenge to us to convey to our children, to our communities, a sense of the world, of what is our view of the world. Maybe could you say a little bit more about that?
Well, I think the biggest challenge we have, I mean, I have no worries about you all here in this room. We could start a peaceful revolution in this moment. We already do. We already do. But how do we convince the people out there? Some educators say adults are lost. You can't teach them anything. You know what that means.
Right.
The laws of the world are there, and you can't change them. The only thing you can do is teaching the children, the next generation, and then we will have progress. I'm not that convinced about it. we could also invite the other generations to join us, but it's a challenge, and that's the challenge I see. Okay, so the actual system is working with the people in it. So the system has a certain stability, and it not goes away like this. So this is the challenge. Any ideas?
Thank you, Richard. Philo or Jonathan, any additional comments?
Yes, the word that comes to my mind at this moment is change or conversion, or it could be transformation. And also it is to be a learning person and organization. Any organization that does not learn anything new constantly is dead. So I think it's so very important. We can talk about church, bishops, cardinals. We have to change. That means that we have to convert ourselves. And then because the world is changing and God is always talking to us through everything that we experience. And so I think that there's a very strong call, and this is a space of conversion and transformation, and which could be, it could mean also prophetic hope.
Thank you, Philo. Jonathan?
The topic is so huge that your mind just goes many different directions, but getting your feedback here. I guess just one comment would be the relative decrease we all need to see in our passports we carry, and an increase in the things which bind us together. Beyond even the faith bonds we have as Christians, through faith engagement with other faiths, obviously, but how many identifiers to our personality and our interests and our focus are no longer served by the national, this bizarre geography we have of two or three superpowers and some waning colonial powers, and then many small states. And we pretend that is somehow a huge part of our identity. But I think those of us in the big powers who carry the passports of the big countries really need to find concrete ways to be more in touch. And of course, some of the initiatives within the Catholic Church come quickly to mind, but finding international friends and allies and partners co-workers, because of the bonds of faith within the Christian family and beyond the Christian family. At a time when religion seems to be a little bit of a fading thing of the past, if you have some time with young people.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I would encourage all of you to think about what spiritual and organizational strengths can Pax Christi, our family of peace, Catholic peace organizations, bring to creating a world where integral human flourishing is possible. And I think Archbishop Ricciuti would like to add to our conversation this morning.
Parlo in italiano, ma non speak English.
We speak Italian.
Allora, innanzitutto grazie ai relatrici e relatori di questa mattina, perché abbiamo riflettuto su questa previsione così drammatica, no? Della ripresa del riarmo attraverso le armi nucleari. E quindi noi dobbiamo, come Pax Christi internazionale, levare sempre la voce. È una strada sbagliata e dobbiamo richiamare i due trattati, il trattato che voi avete ripreso, grazie, per la non proliferazione e il trattato per la messa al bando delle armi nucleari. Nel 1968 il primo, 2021 il secondo. E Pax Christi Italia ha una campagna chiamata Italia Ripensaci. È uno di quei paesi che non ha firmato e non vuole firmare il trattato per la messa al bando delle armi nucleari. Nel 2019, come da fotografia che è lì, il Consiglio nazionale di Pax Christi ha messo un'udienza privata con Papa Francesco, il quale ebbe a dire nel 2019 non solo è illegale il possesso e l'uso delle armi nucleari, ma è anche immorale. Aggiunse questa parola, immorale. Il 2021, in occasione del trattato per la messa al bando delle armi nucleari, io pausa?
No, così le iniziative.
Ah, siamo no. Non è molto, sarà molto.
Ah, ok, allora siamo
No. Il Papa appunto è immorale l'uso delle armi, possesso e uso delle armi nucleari. Allora, qui siamo a Firenze. Nel 1494 il re di Francia, Carlo VIII, viene a Firenze e la cinge di assedio. Vuole conquistare Firenze. Firenze manda un ambasciatore che si chiamava Pier Capponi. Va da Carlo VIII e dice: va, calma, dialoghiamo, parliamo, evitiamo. Ma Carlo VIII, irremovibile, vuole conquistare Firenze. E pronuncia questa frase: noi assedieremo e conquisteremo Firenze. L'ambasciatore risponde: voi suonerete le vostre trombe, noi suoneremo le nostre campane. Ecco, Pax Christi Internazionale deve continuare a far suonare le proprie campane, e che sono soprattutto, diciamo, le riduco a due. Giovanni XXIII, pensare di risolvere i conflitti oggi, 1963, nella pace Venters, e con le armi nucleari, in latino, alienum est a ratione, pazzi, folli. E poi Papa Francesco, che sottolinea ancora nella Fratelli Tutti, che basta con la guerra giusta, dobbiamo suonare l'altra campana della pace giusta. E quindi io auguro a Pax Christi Internazionale che faccia suonare sempre queste campane. Thank you.
Bene, ricominciamo. Let's start again with the word of His Excellency. First of all, I want to thank the speakers. Thank you for your reflections, and thank you for letting us think about the dramatic situation through the arm race and what we are experiencing right now. And thank you for letting us think of the great threat represented by nuclear weapons. Thank you. I think that as Pax Christi International, we have to remember that what we are living right now is not possible. So I want to think that, as you also said, that we should remember the importance of treaties, just like the no proliferation for the nuclear arms treaty is very important. It is the Treaty of 1961. There was also another treaty about nuclear weapons on 2021, and we have to remember it. In particular, in a moment like this. Pax Christi International is a good way, is a good solution to solve crises through peace. In Italy, we also say that we have to think again of what's happening, and we have to go back to the main points and remember that our situation, the dramatic situation that we are seeing, is not the good way. And that's why Italy is one of those countries that opposes to the use of nuclear weapons. In 2019, Pax Christi International met in Italy Pope Francis, and during that meeting, he said that the use of of nuclear arms is absolutely illegal, and not only it is absolutely immoral. Just a sec. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Today we are here in Florence, and in 1944, King Charles VIII was here to conquest Florence. And during that occasion, it was sent here Pier Capponi, and he was an ambassador to meet King Charles and stop this war that was coming out. So he wanted to stop him, but when he met him, King Charles VIII said that he would not stop. He wanted to have the control on Florence. So in that case, this ambassador, Pier Capponi, said, okay, it's fine, you will use arms, but we won't do the same, we will use peace. And I want to remember that Pax Christi International still today has important tools of peace. And first of all, I want to mention Pope John XXIII, who in 1963 said the use of nuclear arms is absolutely crazy. And the second thing is, the second tool, I think, is based on Pope Francis' words. In Fratelli Tutti, he said, we need to fight for a just peace. So I hope that in the future, Pax Christi International will be still able to use a speech based on peace. Thank you.
I think we have a few comments, but we do need just to, yes, okay,
And then say it's working.
all right. We do need to go for coffee if you're going to have coffee or tea, in just 1 minute. And, then we'll take a break and then you return to your working groups, the same ones we had yesterday, and you can find each other. Yes,
Before
Godfrey.
break and before working groups. My idea is the same as the ladies one who was here. Yeah, we share the same idea.
Okay.
Based on what these different gentlemen and ladies from different points of the world preaching one thing: we are image of God. Based on their wisdom and considering what is happening in the world, may it European Union, may it UN Assembly, General Assembly. I say, we, outside this context here, we do the evil that we hate. And from now on, Pax Christi International has just proved that after 8 years old, Pax Christi International is over, beyond European Union, beyond the UN General Assembly. And those two fora, European Union, UN General Assembly, when they meet, one may wonder if they are Christians, if they pray God before joining. They pretend to build peace in the world, to solve conflicts between the nations of the world. But what happens after? So, from this World Assembly of Pax Christi International, based on what we have shared here, from the beginning, I would suggest Pax Christi International play its role of advocacy lobbying to get a floor at the European Union Assembly and present what we have just shared here. Before their topics, to get a floor at the UN General Assembly. I mean UN General Assembly, not UN Security Council, but UN General Assembly. Pax Christi should come, and before they start their agenda, these people here should express that we are all God's creation. We should love each other. We should work for the peace of the whole world. It's my recommendation after this world meeting here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Godfrey. Franco needs 20 seconds, and then I would encourage you.
I will just build on my president's suggestion of the episode of 1484 in around 1480s, Per Capone. I've been thinking of the crisis of international law in the past 10 years. And my conclusions lately is that what we miss more Per Capone people. We miss good leaders. The leadership is very important. And I will finish with St. Paul. St. Paul used to say, is the law teaches us what we are when we are doing wrong, but doesn't tell us how to do good. And leaders are very important. So that I think you have been suggesting often that education stuff from the young people, and after that, the good leaders will come, I'm sure.
Thank you, Pastor. I suspect that many of you have similarly important thoughts and contributions, and so bring those to your small groups, and we will be receiving them again later today. These are 2 questions suggested for the small groups. What are the most fundamental challenges to achieving just peace or shalom? And what spiritual and organizational strengths can Pax Christi International bring to creating a world where integral human flourishing is really possible? So that's your task. We have a coffee break for a few minutes now, and then you go to your small groups. Anything else, Martinez?
Group 9, could you please show up?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't a part of the group 9 yesterday, so but I want to join. So who's group 9? Okay, I'll follow you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
That's my group yesterday.
Okay, we are now having a break. So thank you everyone for attending our session. Just to say goodbye to the audience in Zoom and see you later. Thank you.